Let's now perform some operations with dates. So one cool thing that we can do with dates is to do calculations with them. For example, we can subtract one date from another date in order to calculate how many days have passed between the two dates. And this works because whenever we attempt to convert a date to a number, then the result is going to be the timestamp in milliseconds. And with these milliseconds, we can then perform calculations. So again, the timestamps are going to be really helpful here in this situation. So let's get this date here. Okay, and let me just demonstrate what I just said. So I will convert to a number this future. So you see, it worked. And the same thing is going to happen when I use the plus operator on it. So you see, and so in fact, that does mean we can now do operations with it. So if we subtract one date from another, the result is going to be a number like this, so a timestamp in milliseconds, and then we can simply convert these milliseconds back to days, or to hours, or to whatever we really want. So let's actually now create a function that takes in two dates, and it's going to return the number of days that pass between these two dates. So days passed is going to be a function, or let's use an arrow function. So a nice one-liner. So date 1 and date 2. And then all we need to do is date 2 minus date 1. And so let's suppose that date 2 is later. But in case we do not want to suppose that, we can simply take the absolute value here. And then it doesn't matter which of the dates here happened first in time. But for now, let's keep it like this so I can show you later what I mean. So for now, let's actually also return this result. And then I will just call this function here. So calc, or actually it's just called, well, it should be called calc. So this looks a bit nicer. So calc days passed. And then let's just create two dates here. So let's use this one here. Maybe make it a little bit simpler. Let's say here April 14th. So this is the first date, the first that happens in time. And then the second date, let's just say, well, April 24th. So this then makes it easy for us to visualize the result. And let's just call this const days 1 and then log it to the console. All right. And so this gives us these milliseconds. And so now we just need to convert them. And this is similar to what we did, I think, in one of the previous lectures. So we want to divide by 1000. And so this converts milliseconds to seconds. Then that times 60 to convert it to minutes. Then times 60 to convert it to hours. And then times 24, which converts it to days. And again, that's because there are 24 hours in a day. There are 60 minutes in 1 hour, 60 seconds in 1 minute, and 1000 milliseconds in 1 second. And so now we get 10 days. And that makes sense, right? So from April 24 to April 14, we have exactly 10 days. Now what if here we pass 4? So now it's going to be the other way around, right? So now we have minus 10, but we don't want that. We always want it to be 4. And so that's what I meant earlier, where we can now simply take the absolute value of this. So math.absolute. Which of the dates we pass in first. So if we now put 4 here and 14 here, then the result is still going to be 10. Great. So this works just really nice. Now, if you need really precise calculations, for example, including time changes due to daylight saving changes and other weird edge cases like that, then you should use a date library like moment.js. And that's a library that's available for free for all JavaScript developers. But for something simple like this, we should be fine. Now let's just consider that one of these days here also has some time. So let's say in this one here, it's also 10 in the morning or 10 hours and 8 minutes. Doesn't really matter. But let's see what happens to the days now. And so indeed, we now get 10.4. So we might not want that. And in this case, we can simply use math.round on all of this. Okay, so keep that in mind. But I will just leave it like this. All right. And now let's actually use this function to format and display our dates in a little bit nicer way here in our application. So basically what I want to do is if one movement happened today, then here instead of the current date, I want to display today. Then if it happened yesterday, I want to write yesterday. And then if it happened like a couple of days ago, then I want this to say like 2 days ago or 5 days ago instead of the date. And I'm sure you have seen this kind of stuff in many web applications that you use in your daily life. For example, if you post something on Facebook, and if you then watch it the next day, it will say that you posted it yesterday. It's not going to display the exact date if it was just yesterday. And so that's a really nice use case of using a function like this. So let's grab this here. So I'm copying it. And then let's go to the display movements function where we do actually print the date. Now this is all kind of getting out of hand. So we have a lot of extra code here. And now we will add even more. So this function here and even some more stuff. And so let's take all of this here and actually create a new function which will have the purpose of formatting this. All right. So let's cut this here, as I just said, and create a function up here just to make it a little bit more modular. All right. And then we could also reuse this function in some other place, even though right now, in this case, we don't need it. I'm just doing this to split up the functionality a little bit across different places in our code. Okay. So this one receives a date as an input, and it will return the formatted date then. Okay. So I'm copying all of this, but actually this one should stay back here where we got it from. And then also, so this, we need this variable back here where it came from. So display date, because we use it down here as the value that we eventually want to print to the user interface. And so this one should actually be the result of calling our new function. So this format movement date. So format movement date, and here we pass in the date variable that we just created up here. All right. And so with this, we just exported the functionality here into a new function. So let's grab this and put it here at the top of the scope. And so for now, just to keep this working, let's return then this value. All right. And as you see, and let's just make sure by logging in. So as you see, the dates are now still being correctly printed. So we successfully exported this functionality here of displaying the dates into this function. And now we can just implement what I just said. So basically calculating how many days passed since the current date and between the date that we are working with. All right. So let's say const days passed and between. So between right now that is new date. And then the second date is the date that we just received here. So let's just print this to the console to see if it works. Okay. So what's all of this here? So we are printing here actually the wrong thing. So we want days past. So that was a mistake, obviously. But it's still not correct. And okay, I have another mistake. So probably you saw this already. So I did not even call the calc days past function. But now it should be good. And indeed, now we have our days here. All right. And now let's actually round them. Okay, so that's what I was just saying earlier, so that we should probably round these dates. So we already learned how to do that. So math.round all of this. And so this looks a lot better now. Now let's actually modify our dates here a little bit. And you should do the same. And what I'm going to do is to make one date yesterday, and then also a date like 3 or 4 days ago. So see what's your current date, and then simply subtract 1. So for me, it's August 2nd. So I'm going to use August 1st, and then also July 28th, and maybe another July here, 25, or maybe 26. Okay, it's just so that we can see like the yesterday or 3 days ago or something like that. All right, so do that now, and then let's go back here to our function. And then we want to implement some logic based on this day past. So if days past is 0, and so basically that is if we do something today, then actually the string that we want to print is not the current date, but instead today. All right. Then if 1 day has passed, we want to return yesterday. Okay. Next up, let's say if the number of days passed is within the last week. So that's less or equal 7. And then we will return the number of days. So days past, days ago, and else. So only if more than 7 days have passed, only then we want to return the actual date. Okay, does that make sense? So let's save and see if it works. And yes, beautiful. So that's yesterday, 5 days ago, 7 days ago, and then here the other dates right here. So that's beautiful, great. Let's now just do something. And actually let's transfer like 500 to Jessica Davis. And that's going to be the other way around. Jessica Davis 500. And so now we should get one log here with today. Yes, indeed, there is today. And now if we log in as Jessica Davis, we should get the same. So now we have a deposit coming from today. And actually we also have something from 7 days ago. So great. That's amazing if you ask me, that we are capable of now doing something like this, which looks like a real web application that you might use every day. All right. Now, maybe the logic here is a bit confusing with all of these returns, but that's completely normal. So as you know, once we return, the function stops executing. And so these other returns will then never be reached. And so this is a pretty common technique. And actually, we wouldn't even need this else. So if I just remove this here, then all of this code will only be executed if all of these here are not executed. So only if all of these here are false, the rest of the code is even executed. So you see it works the exact same way. Awesome. So our application is even better now. And in the next 2 lectures, we will then do what I mentioned earlier, which is internationalization, which is to basically format these dates and also these numbers here according to each of the countries of these accounts.